Hi there. Here I want to talk about the best method of teaching or learning mathematics, and I'd like to tell you my own story. About 18 years ago, when I was in high school, I was in the first year of high school, and for the first time having an algebra course, my dear math teacher started by teaching us the expressions, monomials, polynomials, also the mathematical operations on them as adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. He also solved some problems to us, and at the end of each session, he gave homeworks. You know, the homeworks was like this. We had to multiply such a polynomial into another one, or some product plus another polynomial, whatever, and we have to do the annoying calculations. Then he taught us some algebraic identities as the difference of squares identity, this one, x plus y times x minus y equals to x squared minus y squared. Which made doing some homeworks a bit easier. For instance, homeworks like this. Say x squared minus 5x plus 2 times x squared minus 5x minus 2. And using this identity makes it easier. And the operations and identities took about 3-4 sessions. Also the homeworks took about 3-4 sessions, and on the next session he started like this. Okay kids, today's lesson is factorization. As you learned so far, for instance, x plus 2 times x plus 3 equals to x squared plus 5x plus 6. Now, factorization is doing the opposite and writing this polynomial as this product. Then he talked about the methods of factoring on that session and also on the next 4-5 sessions. He also solved some problems and gave us homeworks at the end of each session. Now, I think that at the end of that session, he started factorization. The unconscious mind of a typical student would say to itself, what the hell? It's been 3-4 sessions. The teacher talked about mostly multiplication and the identities and bothered us with the homeworks, and now he's talking about doing the opposite. Okay, you see, it is like, suppose you're building a house and after you're done, someone requires you to destroy the house without giving any good reason of why you should destroy the house now. And I said that it happens unconsciously because the students just, just don't learn happily and dislike the subject. But that was the thing happening unconsciously. Now you may be thinking that students can just ask their teachers that, for instance, why do we need to do the opposite of multiplication? So here's two things. The students may don't know themselves that what seems to be wrong. So they ask their teachers, to me, when my dear math teacher told us that factorization is the opposite of multiplication, I just had a bad feeling without knowing that what is wrong. And since most students hate mathematics, it doesn't seem that the problem is because of the students don't ask good or enough questions. And second, this is mostly the best method of teaching, not learning. Okay? Let's get back to how my math teacher taught us algebra, especially factorization, considering that my dear math teacher, was not a bad teacher, because many teachers teach algebra in a way similar to his, and the problem of the usual way of teaching math shows itself vividly when the students try to solve a higher level problem or required to solve a higher level problem, when something inside their heads asking them, again unconsciously, what are you doing? What's all the effort for? And that's the point when they start become disappointed and give up. And it is not just for such a case in which my dear math teacher first talked about multiplication and identities, and then he said, okay, factorization is the opposite, but consider multiplication itself. Again, in teaching that, the instructor should talk about the cases in which we need to do it. If not, again, when the students try to solve a higher level problem or an annoying one like this, which needs a hard work, something inside their heads asking them that what's the effort for? And they probably have not learned the subject good enough, and if they have, again, they would have difficulties in solving higher level problems, so they would start disliking mathematics. So there are two types of teaching or learning mathematics right now. The first one is like my dear math teachers talking about, very abstract and nonsense way. And the second type is similar to the first one, but the instructor finally gives the students the cases in which, for instance, here we need to factor polynomials. And it is bad also because he or she gave the cases after torturing the students by the crazy stuffs, hard homeworks or annoying homeworks, whatever. But the best method is not like the two methods, and it is, which I also use in my tutorial channel, the future math, is that after, for instance, in teaching factorization, is that right after we defined factorization, we should talk about the cases in which we need to do it. And then we should teach the students the methods of factorization. And the cases are better to be touchable and came from practical things, real practices, like, for instance, making a computer or a plane. Also cover more areas. Like, for instance, here, one case in which we need to factor polynomials is solving equations. Equations which, in many fields of science and engineering, we need to do it. We need it in many areas. And the cases, again, should not be annoying or nonsense. And one benefit of this method is that the instructors at the beginning satisfy the minds of the students that what you learn or do in doing homeworks is not nonsense or useless, but it is important because they know that this is for some good reason or reasons the instructors gave them at first or at the beginning of the lesson. Okay, and I do believe that the students first learn happily, also easily and fast, and doing homeworks would not be annoying anymore. Okay, let's have another example. Which is in teaching or learning integral calculus. In a typical course, the instructor starts by defining integrals, the Riemann sums, whatever, then moves on with the methods of integration, and finally gives the students some applications of integral calculus, like finding the volumes of objects or the lengths of a curve. Which is after torturing the students by talking about the nonsense abstract stuffs and requiring them to solve, to do crazy integrations. As a homework. In the best method, the instructor, after defined the integrals, should talk about the cases in which we need integrals. Like the ones I mentioned, and then he or she could move on with the methods of integration. And another thing here is that, for instance, one application of integrals is in finding the lengths of a curve. I guess something inside the head of a typical student would say, who's gonna need it? Where did it come from? So, we should talk about these things in details that why should we care about what is the length of a curve? We could also use this method in teaching or learning the physics-based branches of science or engineering. Okay, the last thing I'd like to mention is that this method is for the current educational system and syllabuses. But if I ran a school in which I'd be able to make my own policies in teaching math and science, I could do even better than that. You see, mathematics is somehow not a real science, and it's a tool in another branches of science or engineering, whatever. So, in my school, the school I run, there would not be a course titled as mathematics or algebra or whatever, and the courses there would be the courses like how to build a building or how to make a car or a plane or a computer. The real things, and my students would learn the necessary mathematics within the courses I mentioned as the tool for the real things, like how to build a building or a car. We also do the same thing with physics. Physics is a real science, but in my school, I'm not going to teach it as a different course, and I'm going to teach it within the other courses I mentioned, or whatever courses, which I already talked about that in details in some videos titled as If I Ran a School, I Would, and you could watch them. They are on one of the playlists. I forgot the title, but the playlist is on teaching and learning. Thanks for watching, and bye.